Welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. I'm Greg Burke, and now in my 24th year as Director of Athletics at Northwestern State University. Creating an environment in which student athletes and young professionals can develop skill sets to make them successful in any walk of life is invaluable. Mentors can provide an extra measure of confidence by helping them grow, by seeking their input, and by listening to their ideas. This and much more can be found in Will Baggett and Ty Brown's book, The Blueprint for a Successful Career, a foundation for developing young professionals. Find it on Amazon.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on social media at 1Q Leadership.
Our guest today is Chrissi Rawak. Chrissi is the Director of Intercollegiate Athletics and Recreation at University of Delaware. Greetings, Chrissi. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you on because I know you are big into strategic planning and culture and basically trying to get everything set up so it works in favor of success for the student athletes.
That is correct.
And the reason why I want to have you on, I know a lot of young professionals, and when you talk about young people leaving companies, right? People don't leave companies, they leave leaders. And a lot of people will change jobs next year, especially young crowd. They come for a year and go because they're not happy with what they're doing there. And from what I found is like sometimes the leadership at the top may be great, but if you're great at the top and the people who are entry level or, a couple levels down are leaving every year, there's a disconnect somewhere. And I wonder if that's something you've experienced, or I have my own philosophies, but I'd like to hear if you've experienced that and just there at Delaware you've been there since 2016. In the 3 years you've been there as in the AD role.
Great question, and absolutely experienced that.
Really? Okay.
Yes. And it became really clear for us. One of the things that we did 2 years into my tenure, because as you shared, we've done a lot of culture work within our organization, getting really clear on our vision, our mission, our core values, our strategy. We use those to hire, along with obviously competencies within jobs, of course, but those other things are also very important to us as we're hiring people. And so employee engagement, which is something that the Gallup company does very well, is something that we utilize one of our professors on campus, because I felt like after 2 years, we've done a lot of work around our culture and hired a lot of new people. I wanted to get a sense of where are we from an employment engagement perspective, because I do believe, like you stated, we are a people business and we win through our people. And the investment in our people is critically important for us to ultimately be successful. So it was fascinating, to be honest. And I've since done additional research and talked to other leaders, even outside of athletics. And this is not just an athletics phenomenon or University of Delaware. I don't want to claim that any other athletic department is challenged like we are in this space. But in talking to other leaders within industries that I have the ability to connect with at Delaware, they struggle with the same thing. And what we found in the Gallup survey is, and there's 12 specific questions, is that there were certain questions, and particularly the ones around that you would imagine an organization that was pretty sophisticated and connected, we did really well at. So people recognize we value learning and education. We value development. Those were the things. We value innovation. We value creativity. But where we missed were actually the fundamental or the foundational things that make organizations work. And that's, what's my role? What's my responsibility? Yeah. What resources do I have available? What are the expectations? And as you can imagine, for me, I was like, what? How is that possible? Because, we wrote great job descriptions, and we tried to be really clear as we were hiring people. And as we talked to the professor, the faculty member that worked with us, and really peeled the onion back, it was about the managers that were leading people that were more than likely new to it. Or if they stepped into it, they hadn't been trained. Oftentimes, and this is, again, industry-wide, you get promoted because of what you've done in the area of expertise that you have. So if you're a great IT professional, well, you get promoted to manage IT professionals. But we're not going to actually teach you how to do that, right? Because you were really successful here, so we're going to assume you're going to figure out here, which incredibly different skill sets, very different skill sets. So we have taken a very intentional step in the last 18 months, utilizing the feedback from our managers and our staff and putting together, I would call very, like I said, intentional learning and development programming, both informal and formal, with our people that are leading people. And not only that, but really being clear about the expectations. You know, I think one of the other things that I've done, because I would say this is where I feel like I was failing. I don't know if failing, but missing is, you know me now, I believe wholeheartedly in developing people. Like that is at the core of who I am, and developing people into leaders. And they obviously have to define that for themselves. But I wasn't talking about that with my one-on-one direct reports. You know, we'd have a one-on-one, we'd have an agenda we co-created. We use it and put it in Google Docs, and we both add topics to it. I let the leader, my direct report, start the meeting and say, go wherever you want to go. And I recently added leadership lessons. And that is on every single agenda. And so it is now very intentional in every conversation I have with folks that directly report to me to say, what have you learned? and what are you going to do with that? Right. And how are you going to help the people that you are working with also learn? And so, you know, we're going to resurvey our staff come March. And obviously, you know, I'm hopeful the data will tell us. Yeah. I definitely feel like we've taken very intentional steps on the management side and really developing folks and holding them accountable, but teaching them before we hold them accountable. And then also giving people the opportunity to say, I don't think I want to do this, right? You know, and that's okay. You know, we need everybody. We need people that are, quote, individual contributors, and we need people that are leaders of people.
I agree. I have a organizational leadership philosophy. It's in the budding stages, right? It's called forward management, but there are a couple of key pieces that are important for what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. The first most important, and you'll agree, is purpose for the organization. Mm-hmm. People need to understand. Yep. People need to understand their role in executing the purpose. Mm-hmm. But one of them is the expectations, right? You explain the expectations, and then you explain how the expectations will be evaluated. And that's what a lot of people miss on. And I think that's one of the most important things. And I think there are 4 outcomes of that. Either people will do their job, people will excel at their job, they'll choose not to do the job, or you or they will realize that they probably don't have the ability to do the job. And so you adjust accordingly from that point. And that's very important. Then there's also the aspect of feedback, mm-hmm. right? And there's 2 parts of feedback. People want to know that their insight into the organization is heard and mm-hmm. potentially useful, but also people want to know how they're doing at executing whatever their role is. And I wonder if you found any of those things in terms of what you're doing, in terms of the intent and what you'll reevaluate when it comes March.
I love all that, by the way, and a few things I would plus up what you're thinking about. But to answer your question, I mean, feedback, this is where I think even when people use the word feedback, what do you think?
When I hear feedback, I created the philosophy, so it's...
But you probably, maybe before you created the philosophy, you thought critical, right?
Yeah, along those lines.
So that's more natural. There are some people, like I would say 20 years ago, that's where I would go. Mm-hmm. Oh God, it's going to be bad. Versus now, I'm like, great. Feedback is a gift.
That's what I need. Give it to me.
It's a gift. But you have to learn how to give it, and you have to learn how to receive it. And so... we have talked, and we actually are doing a couple of different pilot things. There's a book club around crucial conversations that's happening right now to see how could we leverage that. We're talking a lot about feedback. We've got thought partners that we've connected managers with to managers to help kind of role play some of the things that we are looking for them to do. I mean, so much of it is practice, right? This is again, I think the thing that gets missed is like this leadership is not you just wake up one day and you have it. It's a constant process of learning, educating, adjusting. I mean, I'm just turned 50. I'm still learning about this stuff, and I'm still making mistakes, and I'm still recalibrating. But so much of it is coming from listening and receiving feedback. The one thing that I would share with you, just plussing up your 4 points, is around the expectations comment. So I think, again, it's not just enough to say, here's what I expect of you. It's, here's what I've expected of you. Do you feel like you have the knowledge or the tools or the resources?
Before letting them go to do it, right?
To be able to meet that. Or a clear path on how to get those things. I just listened to a Simon Sinek, I think it was from 2016, TEDx, and he talked about answering phones in part of his session, and how, when I was growing up, I had the wall phone. My parents, I think I had to be 12 years old to answer the phone.
You had to roll
and I had to say, "Hello, the Rawak residence. This is Chrissi. Can I help you?" Literally, that's how I was taught to answer the
Customer service
phone.
almost,
right?
Yeah.
People nowadays, they have one phone they answer, and they know who's calling, and they know they're calling for them. So, if you're in a job now where you're having to answer a phone, regardless of whether it's customer service or not. I mean, I was talking to one of my colleagues here who's young, and she's like, "I didn't know how to answer the phone. Do I answer at University of Delaware Athletics? Do I answer at, 'Hi, this is Julia'? What do I do?" And I mean, that's real, right? I mean, it sounds silly, but
those are real things you got to train people on.
Exactly right. Or give them, like I said, the clear expectations on not just this is what you need to do, but this is how
you do it,
how you can do it.
And do you think you have the resources to be able to execute? That's
yeah,
an
and if you
excellent
don't,
addition.
why not? Let's talk about that. Because the intent is not to support you to be successful.
Right.
I mean, that's crazy. We just spent all this time to hire you, and we absolutely want you to be successful and to grow and to learn.
I want to pick up on feedback, right? Initially, in that leadership philosophy I mentioned, I call it haptic feedback. And people were like, everybody won't know what haptic means. Mm-hmm. Haptic feedback is like, say, on your cell phone and you're dialing a number and it might vibrate every time you press it, right? So you know that you are getting a response.
A little stressy.
Exactly, right? And so I called it that, and so I changed it because everybody know what haptic meant. But I say that because the two types of feedback, either I'm giving you input into what I think can help this organization, feedback to the organization, or you're giving me input into how I am executing the expectations. So I wonder, in the exercises you mentioned, are they geared more one towards the other, or are they both feedback, or is one on just, I mean, how do you couch the two different ways that you garner feedback? People, the younger folks saying, I can help how we, somebody as an intern sitting in a meeting where they're supposed to just be taking notes, but now they're raising their hand because they feel like they have insight into how to make something better.
So it's both for us, and we're, again, I'll use the word intentional about the setups that we have, whether it's an all-team meeting or special sessions that we pull together. We've done a couple of town halls. Those have been really interesting, and I appreciate actually how our staff has engaged in those, and we'll have leadership team up in front and open forum, ask any questions you want to ask.
Which gives you insight.
Yeah, which gives us insight. And
you may use it. I guess if it's great, you'll probably use it.
And I would tell you, there's no question that I may not use it, but I'm always listening. Right. And I work hard, I'm not perfect at it, to be able to circle back to people and say, I really appreciated that. Here's how I'm going to use it, or here's how I don't think I can use it right now. Or let me give you some perspective that may change that feedback. And, I am a feedback hound. Like, I love surveys. I love focus groups. I love those conversations. And I think part of it is because so much of how I've learned and grown myself and the organizations that I've had the privilege to be a part of, I use that for us to get better. Right. I don't survey to survey. Yeah. That's not helpful. I think some people automatically assume that it's going to fall on deaf ears.
When you reevaluate in March, are they the same questions, or is it the same exact questions? Mm-hmm. And I guess that's how you'll know the baseline was set and you weren't happy with the results of the baseline, right? So you'll come back in March and look at everything.
Yeah, there were certain things. So we did it. The neat thing about the Gallup is, it's the same set of questions. They get analyzed outside of, our world. And we had the department-wide results, and then we had team-specific results. So what was great is each of the leaders understood what they needed to work on within their teams. So while there was an overarching element of the topics that I described earlier, some of the individual teams needed to work on a few different things. And so part of our action steps for this fiscal year have been very team specific for each of the individual leaders on what they are working on. And those were created by the teams. Right. So again, they're involved, they're buying in. And if they're not, they're pretending like they are. And I hope that's not the case, because at the end of the day, it sure isn't very fulfilling. And I wouldn't want that for them.
So here's what I wonder. We are able to see, when you see a lot of young professionals coming and going so fast, nature of the workforce now, I guess, right? You're able to see it. But in previous years, because people have been promoted to leadership positions forever, whether they were ready or not, right? But in previous years, how would we see if they weren't doing a good job if we didn't do surveys? Because the entry levelers weren't leaving every year like they are now. I don't know. I just, in your experience.
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, and this is one of the things too that's interesting within college athletics. I'm not sure how many people actually look at their talent and consider retention, internal promotion, turnover rates. I mean, we're again, at 2 years, we started to evaluate that. I'll be honest, I gave us kind of a pass the first 2 years because
it was fluid. Build it,
yeah, we're trying to build it. It was fluid. It was for some people. It wasn't for others. And I think as I've shared with you on these podcasts before, or these, like, that doesn't make them good and us bad, right? It's just, this is who we are, really clear. I think that looking at those statistics and it's data, and there's always stories within data, but really understanding kind of what your talent world looks like in athletics, and also thinking about succession planning and how you need to be very intentional in that. That's a talent strategy, right, that we're working on. And I'm not, and I learned that in my previous worlds, but I think it would serve athletic programs well to pay attention to those things.
Look at those things. They definitely will, because at some point...
Because it costs money, right? I mean, it's time and money and relationships, and when people are leaving, and there's good turnover, right? We just had a gentleman, Keith Anderson, who got promoted to an associate head coach in Texas State, and God love him. He was with us for 3 years, and he was phenomenal and did so much for our student athletes. And did I want to lose him? No. But I'm proud of him and his, the folks he worked with. And now he's going to go off and he's going to take what he learned here and give that gift to other people. And that's something that, I think is also, there's good in that, right? Sometimes you can't give people more opportunity.
So I'll ask another question here. I got a couple more questions before we wrap. But the mid-level managers who may not be great at leading other people, do they know that? When you did this survey, did you do the survey just because you want to consistently evaluate, or did you do the survey because you felt like I need to know what's happening here? And then when you found out that there might be a situation, did the people who were in the mid-level management positions even know that there was a situation?
Yeah, great question. So I did the survey because I felt like it was time for me to understand organizationally where we were, and that I needed to have people who were in those leadership roles in the organization as a whole to understand where we are. Because this isn't about Chrissi. I take responsibility for all of it because it's the organization I'm responsible for leading. But at the end of the day, I can't solve the problem. Like, we collectively need to see it as an opportunity for us to get better, for us to be smarter, and for us to ultimately achieve our winning aspiration. And we have to collectively do that together. So, I think that some people are more self-aware than others. I mean, if you look across the world, and like, some people are more self-aware. I mean, what's interesting, and why is that, right? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, you asking me that question makes me want to go Google, why is it that some people are more self-aware than others? Because I don't know the answer to that. And what's tricky is the ones that are self-aware, obviously, there's a level of coachability and openness. And the others, it's trickier. Right. And that's honestly sometimes where you have to use the data to help them see, and then ideally to help them grow.
If they are, prior to doing this survey, there are other great leaders in college athletics with great senior leadership and executive leadership, and you get to mid-management and they be good. The mid-level management may be delivering what you hired them to do, but there still may be a problem in their leadership of the people they're leading. Mm-hmm. It's like, if you don't do this survey, you probably don't know. Okay, they're giving you the results you asked for. You see the paper, you see that everything is working, but really there's turmoil at the bottom.
So that statement, I mean, it comes back to what I felt like when I evaluated myself, what I don't feel like I was paying enough attention to, as around the conversations you have and the expectations you have to have on leading people. So, my direct reports, I say to them, particularly now that we're 3.5 years into this, 70% of your job is strategy and leading your people. 30% of your job is doing. I mean, that's just part of our world.
The deliverable. The rest is,
The rest is, how are you, that's a significant chunk of your job, right? And yet what I was talking about was, did you get that done? How'd you do that? Did you get? And I'm like, hello, how are they gonna? And so it trickles down, at that middle manager level. I actually even don't love that word. I wish if you've got another one, that'd be great. It's probably 40-60, 40% or 50-50 at times, and it may flux. Like 50% of your time should be about leading your people. 50% of your time should be about executing the strategy. And we're not clear about that, right? Again, what got them to that manager role? Why are they successful? Because of what they did.
What's interesting is like the statement that successful organizational culture or successful organizational leadership is much bigger than the deliverables, right? You know what I mean? Your job is much bigger than the bottom line of what you turn in for me to evaluate. There's a whole lot more in terms of leading people.
The only way to get to in my opinion, my humble opinion, the way to get to the success of the bottom line is through your people.
The final question I'll ask is more personal. You seem like this is a big part of the way you think and the way you lead. I wonder, do you lead your personal life like this? Are you?
That's not a fair question. No,
Do you survey yourself? I find myself very, critical of myself, right? How did I handle that? How do we do there? How am I going to approach this? But I wonder, somebody on your level, does everything have some type of evaluation point? Everything has an approach to it, has legs to strategy. How are we kind of thing?
So I would say more often than not, yes. And part of it is because that works for me. And that's something I've learned over time. Again, not perfect at it, but I build things around me to help us be successful, including myself. Yeah, and that's learned, right? I mean, I've made a lot of mistakes. I'm going to continue to make a lot of mistakes, but I take those mistakes and I treat them as opportunities to get better, and that's what motivates me.
Chrissi, this has been an excellent conversation. I really appreciate you joining us here on the One Question Leadership Podcast.
Well, I appreciate you and asking these questions and being able to share this information with others. So thank you so much.
That was Chrissi Rawak. She is the Director of Intercollegiate Athletics and Recreation at University of Delaware. And of course, this is Ty Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today.
This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.